What's up, Nick? First person. Oh, J Cell's on here. Just waiting for Chaps to join me. Hopefully, everybody's day was pretty good today. There's Chaps right there. Let's see if I can add him. Hey,
What's up,
Chaps,
man?
how you doing?
Not too bad. Yourself?
Oh, not so bad. Just another day in Groundhog Land.
Interesting times.
Yeah, absolutely. Where are you at right now?
I'm in my living room, sitting on my couch.
Nice, very um, urban kind of chic uh, cement background there.
Yeah, look, box in the sky.
Nice,
A
nice.
little different vibe than the rest of your peeps. I live in the heart of Toronto.
Yeah, I heard a siren there. Someone's probably getting chased down for breaking the distancing rules.
Oh, it's interesting. I've actually heard way more sirens in the last while.
Really?
Yeah, maybe because I'm home more. Who knows? But
And it's maybe it's just quieter overall too, hey? Like sounds traveling or something like that.
yeah,
Anyway, so
I was gonna
so
say it is eerily quiet for the most part, except the lakeshore. So
oh yeah.
I try to get out and like bike ride every day or do something outdoors active.
Hmm.
Um, but all the people basically flock to the only places they can exercise. So the Lakeshore Trail is literally like they're gonna have to shut it down or something. It's pretty crazy.
Is it? I bet, yeah. Yeah, similar stuff happened in Nova Scotia. Not this weekend because the weather wasn't as nice, but the weekend before, um, everyone was going to the beaches, everyone was going to the trails and the parks, and it was like that. It was like that on Saturday. Sunday, the province declared a state of emergency and shut everything down, so no one was doing anything after that. And luckily, the whole province has 1 million people, and you guys are probably dealing with something close to that right in that little area. So, so yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, a lot of people jammed into one space.
Yeah, for sure. Tell me about your day. Like, what did you get up to today?
Lots of work. Um, uh, Doing some push stuff. You know, we're a tech company, so fortunate enough that we can work remote.
Hmm.
So I have a home office here in my spot. Built another one of those rigs. So your inspiration there. I built a few for athletes and got another one done for myself.
Oh, did you?
So just finished that up today, and then yeah, got a workout in. Went for a bike ride. Um, I don't know. Talking to you.
That's pretty good. Nice. Well, we can start with we'll jump a little bit ahead of where I sometimes have gone, but you mentioned Push and being a tech company. So tell us a little bit about Push and what you're doing right now.
Yeah. So Push is an interesting one. I started with them after the Rio Olympics. I left the Sport Institute, and I was advising them before that. So we're from the canoe kayak world. We were pretty early adopters of linear position transducers, so tech that measures speed in the weight room.
Hmm.
And they are a startup that's Toronto based, and they approached me maybe in like 2012 because myself and Dawson and the Sports Center, we were using a bunch of different tech that was similar, and they came to us with the first prototype and idea, and I was super jazzed because they basically had all the solutions to all my gripes with all the other tech. You know, remember we used to have to do bench pull testing and type in every tendo
Every
number,
rep, yeah.
rep by rep, and do all that into Excel. And then, they had the idea of kind of a team builder before team builder. And I was really jacked up about that more so than the actual tech. So I started advising them maybe 2012, 2013, and then joined them 2016. I was just kind of burnt out from full-time coaching. So I thought I'd try something completely different. Figured I could always go back. And it's been quite an interesting journey.
Hmm.
Everything from sales, marketing, product development, client relations, validation, science. I wear about 5 different hats for the company. Um, but basically what I'm trying to do is selfishly build the tech I want as a coach.
Hmm.
I'm just kind of trying to solve my own problems. Um, and I know you were probably one of the what I'd consider power users. So, I'd be interested to get your your thoughts and how it's developed, because you've been using it for a while now.
Yeah, no, it's been. I mean, I've been using it for 4 years, like you said, and I was pretty stoked to be able to be one of the kind of early-ish adopters, I guess. We had a situation with one of the sports I work with, which is softball, where it was a very, very decentralized sport. Athletes were all over the place, but we really wanted a way to, not only track what they were doing, but how they were doing it, right? And so, you guys push came to mind right away, and I kind of pitched it to the high performance director and the coach, and man, they were all over it. I think from the coaching staff standpoint, it was a way to increase accountability, and for me, it was a way to learn about what was going on, in Texas and Florida and California and New York State at the time, and also obviously Toronto and Vancouver and all that sort of stuff where the athletes were. So yeah, it's been awesome. And then, things have snowballed from there. I've learned lots and lots about how athletes respond to training and how different individuals respond to different types of training. And I think that's been some of the stuff that I've really, really appreciated about it. I just saw Phil Anderson pop on here. So on the flip side of that, we're obviously using another platform right now, Kinduct, to talk about or to do some of our subjective monitoring type stuff. And that's been great as well. So I know it's been a good overall kind of intro and foray into this tech world, which is obviously blowing up.
Yeah, and they're a local company for you guys, aren't they? Halifax based.
Yeah, just I could probably see, well, not quite, but out my window, I could almost see them if I was really, really high in the air.
Yeah, good dudes. I run into them quite a bit.
On the circuit, on the technology circuit.
Yeah, the conference circuit. It's an interesting one. It's cool to travel around and go to all these congregations of strength coaches. And probably one of the coolest parts is I get to look into all the different bubbles of people from NCAA to pro. I did a month stint in Europe, touring around 6 countries. So I get to peek into different facilities, different mindsets. And it's really cool to see all the different pockets. Because a lot of strength coaches, like, as you know, you're in your bubble just focused on what you have to do. And you don't have a lot of time to necessarily share or get the message out. A lot of teams and schools don't want to share. They want to keep their stuff pretty low key. So it's pretty neat to see and learn, and for lack of a better term, borrow, steal from all the different coaches out there.
Yeah, well, that's why it's awesome to run into you guys at various places, and obviously we keep in touch via electronic devices, regardless if we're on Instagram Live or not. But you guys can share a little bit with us, and see what other people are doing that way. So it's been really good. Yeah. So again, I'm skipping into a different direction, but I remember when you were on. Yeah. I remember when you were on that European circuit, and I was kind of following you via Instagram. And tell us about some of the best experiences that you had while you were over there, and what was going on.
So the one that stands out is Benfica FC, the pro soccer team. We walked into their stadium, and they have pet eagles that fly around the stadium, and the coach literally feeds them. And that's their mascot. It's one of the most insane things I've ever seen. It's just super surreal. Every country's so different. There's so much different training out there. It's a lot more diverse than I expected. It's hard to put a pin on. I visited the Sport Institute in Innsbruck, the Austrian Sport Institute. It's actually run by a Canadian, Carson Patterson. He's an old boy from Alpine Canada way back in the day.
Yeah.
Went to the Swiss Institute of Sport, and they trained their military there. Gave a lecture there. That was pretty fascinating. A lot of it was pro soccer, because they tend to use our stuff quite a bit. Really impressed by like Chelsea and Crystal Palace. The EPL's really, really got their stuff together. The one that impressed me the most from a system standpoint was French rugby, Montpellier. The guy I traveled with, Cedric Unholtz, one of his colleagues, Much, is one of the performance directors there. And just seeing how pro rugby does it is probably one of the best integrations. They had a full biomechanics recovery lab. The gym was kitted out with everything you wanted. And just the way they work together, giant whiteboards. It was a true like performance team.
Right.
So I was really, really impressed, and I would tell people to go look at French rugby as a example of pro sport doing it right.
Oh, really cool. So that's lots of the experiences you had, maybe a little bit on the professional side. How about, I know you were busy, you were working for the most part, but you probably got to do a couple cool things, on the personal side. And I know you're a bit of an outdoorsman. So what did you get up to while you were there on that side?
Honestly, aside from just walking, exploring, tried to walk cities every day and do hikes, but we were full on busy.
Hmm.
There literally wasn't much time for personal stuff.
Oh, well, that's too bad.
Yeah.
Okay, I was just like the other night with Dan Noble. I was going to do a lightning round right off the bat, and then we got into talking, and we were 15 minutes in. So, okay, lightning
Do it.
round starts now. Question one: What? Oh, perfect timing. What are you drinking? What's in the cup?
Beer.
Beer? What kind of
Got
beer?
it's a German wheat beer.
Ah, the Weiss beer.
Hacker Shore, Munich Brewery. It's a tasty one.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm
Went with
back
the
to
big bottle. Figured it would get us through the whole hour.
yeah, exactly. So I've got the tall can here. I'm back to the Malternate Reality, the New England IPA from North Brewing in Dartmouth, just across the bridges here in Halifax area.
Nice.
Cool.
The dark side.
The dark side, exactly. Yeah, you've probably been around there having some, watching some races.
Yeah, I haven't been over there too much. Mostly just the Halifax side.
Right.
To your training center there.
Okay, okay. Um, what if you are currently binge watching anything on Netflix or any of those other platforms? What are you watching right now, or what did you just finish up?
So yeah, I actually, when this all started, I bought Netflix. I didn't have it.
Yeah,
Obviously,
I would have thought that maybe.
obviously, Tiger King
Yeah.
is one of the most insane things I've ever seen. Florida meets Oklahoma. That's all you really need to say. It's amazing. I'd say the other one that's maybe a little offbeat. I'm a sci-fi guy. There's a show called Altered Carbon. It's about like you can download your consciousness into a stack, and then it's just like a meat sleeve, and then you can go into VR and stuff. It's super
Wow.
cool. So highly recommend for any sci-fi heads.
Nice. So we got a good surf recommendation the other night from Dan Noble, and now we got the good sci-fi recommendation. So that's good. We're mixing it up a little bit. Most people have said either Tiger King or Ozarks. So yeah, those are popular ones. But yeah, Tiger King. Like I was in Oklahoma a couple summers ago. I was traveling with softball. We were in Oklahoma City for a tournament, and I took a team van to go to the gas station to grab some like sunflower seeds or something like that. And it was the nighttime. There was a crazy thunderstorm going on because they obviously get some crazy weather down there. And I had like more just weird people come up to me and ask me for various things than I'd ever experienced before. It was funny, but it wasn't like they weren't necessarily begging, and they just asked for like a ride or asked for, but it was constant. It was just crazy. So yeah, I know what you mean. How
Well, and
about
then we've spent some time in Florida,
yeah,
and when you go more inland, things get interesting to say the least. And just seeing all that stuff, yeah, it's a crazy story. It's hard to believe that it's actually a real thing.
yeah, absolutely. What's up, Ryan?
Entertaining.
Ryan Summer. Can you see any of the comments that are coming up on the bottom there?
I can see one, so every time it scrolls.
Oh, so Ryan Summer is a Canadian bobsledder.
Okay.
He just said hey and said what's up. So okay, next question on the lightning round is rapid fire. Is reading. What are you reading right now?
Actually, my phone's on two books. I borrowed the Bondarchuk book, the old school one, from my buddy Cedric, and I'm trying to get through that. It's an interesting read. It's kind of hard. And
Yeah.
then from a non-fiction standpoint, I have The Alchemist in front of me, but I haven't opened it yet. I find it hard to dig into nonfiction because there's always too much science to read.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
What about you?
What am I reading right now? Oh, you know what? So I finished Range not that long ago, which I thought was a great book. He kind of delves into you know, the whole sport or like specialization of sports that starts out by telling the story that's very obviously Tiger Woods. But then it gets into another story of someone who takes a bit of a different path, and it's Roger Federer, and he, you know, did not specialize at all earlier, and then the whole rest of the book kind of talks a little bit about, you know, uh, generalists thriving in a specialized world kind of thing, which I thought was pretty cool. And, you know, it's something that I think about now too, you know, raising a couple of three now small humans, and, you know, how we're going to get into all that sort of stuff. So, you know, like people probably see a lot on my if you know, my followers are here on my Instagram, you know, my older son playing hockey, playing baseball, doing all that sort of stuff. But, you know, I got him into a coding class
Nice.
at Sylvan Learning Center, you know, this winter. So, you know, I'm sure, you know, just dabbling around. It might all be too early, and none of it's going to stick anyway, but who knows?
The LTADing the shit out of them.
Oh yeah, it's just, you know, just a little bit of sampling from all over the map. Yeah, Phil, you know, he's ready to be hired at any point. He's got to start paying rent here soon anyway. Sorry, Phil just offered him a job at Kinda.
um,
um,
the coding thing's interesting. I wanted to go to sports camp as a kid, and both my parents are in the computer world. My dad's IT, my mom's graphic design. So they actually sent me to computer camp as a kid.
oh yeah,
It's like building hard drives and coding and stuff like that. You know, came into handy, like, you know, working for tech. I've always been kind of into tech, but I much rather would have gone to sports camp than computer camp at the time.
yeah, nice. Last rapid fire question is, what was for dinner tonight?
Beef stew.
Beef
I
stew.
had some the last of my weekend batch. So every Sunday I try to cook up one hot pot. I got one of those instant pot, like it's like a pressure cooker, slow cooker, does just about everything. And I try
Hmm.
to do one on a Sunday, and it gives me about 3 dinners for the week. So yeah,
Nice.
beef stew.
How long does a beef stew take in one of those bad boys?
If you do the pressure setting, it does it in an hour.
Oh wow.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah, I'll try to do the like the slow cookers, but then, you know, you got to plan it like just after breakfast and get it in there, and at least you can leave it and go off for the rest of your day. But yeah, that's where that one has an advantage for sure. All right, so we talked a little bit about where you're working right now, at Push in Toronto, but where, like, a little bit more of your backstory, not necessarily, you know, all professional or educational, but, you know, where are you from? What were you into when you were younger, and you know, where'd you go to school and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so I'm from Kingston, Ontario. Decent sized town on the other side of Lake Ontario. It's kind of halfway between Montreal and Toronto. It's known for three things. It's a university town, it's a military town, and it's a prison town. So aside for that, there's not much going on there. I see Corey, the McKinnons. So we'll give a shout out. I got the McKinnons mug. It's a local brewery outside. You had Corey on, and he was talking about his cottage a bunch.
Yep.
So McKinnon's is a brewery just outside of his cottage, and they have a beer fest every year. Corey and I met up there, and that's where this mug is from.
Oh, nice. He knew it right away, hey?
Shout out to McKinnon's. Yeah, oh yeah, he's got it. Played a lot of sports. My family was a big martial arts family. So I did a lot of martial arts and baseball growing up. You know, classic hockey story, burnt out of both. And so I got into basketball, volleyball, soccer, lacrosse, kind of jack of all trades, master of none. Rec, sport for life poster child, you could say. And then, you know, I never really could take any sports to the next level, but I knew I wanted a job in sports. So that's why I went with kin. You know, there was pressure to go down the whole med school route, and kin could kind of fulfill that, but I knew I wanted sport. So I actually went down the athletic therapy physiology path first. And I always just loved sport. I've played a ton of sports. I really got into adventure sports, mountain biking, skiing. I grew up doing a lot of paddling up near the Ottawa area, some whitewater river and the Madawaska, flatwater canoe, stuff like that. So that's kind of where I feel at home mostly is the sports that are out in nature. Consider myself a bit of an outdoorsman. I like to camp and spend as much time out there as I can. You know, there's a lot of beautiful nature up north of Kingston and Cottage Country, Frontenac Park, in between Ottawa and Kingston there. So that's kind of, yeah, as far as a sport background goes. I took a class in grade 10 that was a weightlifting class at my high school. And I was not gifted athletically. I always had to work for it. And so that class seemed like a natural fit just because I love sport. And that's kind of where the whole weightlifting thing started. And I just kept doing it from then on. And I got a personal training job in university. I started that route. Definitely recommend anyone to personal train. You know, you learn real quick about your coaching skills one-on-one.
Yeah.
And it's a great way to refine your communication skills. Spending an hour one-on-one with someone, you can't really hide from it. And then it just kept snowballing. I did the whole AT thing at Mac, doing the sport therapy, the taping, the emergency first aid, injury prevention, rehab, that kind of stuff. And then it was Mr. Steve Lidstone, who's come up a bunch of times.
Mm-hmm. I got to get him on here if he has Instagram.
The legend himself. So I was one of the first Stevelings, as Mel and Julie from Hockey Canada called us, at McMaster. And he told the story of how he got to where he was. So this is actually a funny story. When I was about to leave Mac, they had posted for a head strength coach job. And it was one of the first in the OUA. So Steve was already at York. And he was one of the only ones in the university scene at the time. And my young, naive dumbass, I put my resume in. I was like, oh, yeah, I got my CSCS. I'm going to get this job, so on and so on. And obviously not even going to come close to getting it. But they hired Steve. And I decided to stick around to try and upgrade some marks. And I was like, you know what, let's go see what this guy has to say. He had a meeting. He basically got up, told his kind of spiel at what he's trying to build, and told his story of how he got to where he was. Which was sitting in a room with Scott Livingston, kind of doing the exact same thing. And he stuck to him like glue. And I basically said, well, I'm going to do that to you because I want the job you have. So I'm going to be a cockroach at your side, and I'm going to learn everything I can and do whatever I can because I want the job you have. And that's kind of what kicked me off down the whole S&C path. And I never really looked back.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. You know what? You brought up a memory for me with the high school piece. Like I've quickly mentioned, you know, my main mentor, I guess, when I was in university would have been Matt Jordan. I met him in my third year of, going into my third year of school.
Another legend.
Yeah, another legend, exactly. But, you know, my love for the weight room started well before that. And, you know, it kind of started actually when I was in grade 10, and we had a small gym in our high school. And I didn't play any high school sports because I was playing baseball, and there was no baseball at our high school. But I played, but one of the guys on the football team, a guy in grade 12, was in there at the same time as me. And, you know, I had no idea what to do. And he kind of took me under his wing, and his name's Ryan Birch. And he was strong, man. He was benching, you know, 2-3 plates or whatever. I don't even, at the time it was like, I had no idea. But, you know, took me through a couple workouts and, you know, got me going on it. And I never left the gym after that, basically. So yeah, that's great. That's cool, man. I totally forgot about that story. And personal training wise too, you know, before I started strength and conditioning, I was personal training. Well, first at a community gym in Northeast Calgary, which if anybody on here is from Calgary, you know what the Northeast is like.
I don't, so tell me. I'm curious.
Yeah. So the Northeast it's not that bad or anything like that. But if you talk to somebody from the city, you know, it's where the girls from the South wouldn't want to hang out with the guys from the North for, you know, various reasons. You know, there's probably a much lower, people don't go to university necessarily from there as often as they would from other parts of the city. A little bit rough and tumble for various reasons, but, you know, not crazy. So
The wrong side of the tracks.
The wrong side of the tracks, basically. Like I've told the story a couple times now over the last week, and it could lead me to my next question for you. Is, you know, I had a group of 4 really close friends when I was in junior high. Like we used to meet up at my house because it was the closest to the junior high. Do our hair, watch like Darkwing Duck Probably eat my parents' food because none of their parents had food in the cupboards most of the time. And then we'd walk to school. And sometimes we'd do various things that I won't mention here, but that was kind of the way that the junior high and grade, especially grade 8, went for us. But by the time even grade 9 hit, one of those guys was gone because he got kicked out of school. I went to, there was kind of 2 high schools that you could go to. One was sort of the tech high school, and one was kind of the more vocational high school. The other 2 guys initially went to the vocational high school, and I went to the tech high school, which is where I sort of broke path with them. I kept in contact with them a little bit though, and we would see each other every once in a while. But one of the guys ended up, going through and becoming a journeyman electrician, so he did very, very well for himself. And the other guy, didn't finish grade 10, got a girl pregnant in grade 11, and kind of had to live that life for the rest of that time. So that's where my close group of friends from junior high sort of ended up, and it kind of just tells a bit of a story from, I guess, in my mind, from sort of my experiences where I came from. So that's why I've been asking all the other guys, what are your, like, did you have a close group of friends when you were kind of in junior high or high school, and what are they up to now? Not specifically, but
Yeah, so I went to a very small elementary school in Kingston called Sinclair, and there was only one class per grade. And a lot of the people that I came up through all that elementary school, there's about 5 guys that I'm really tight with still. We went through all high school, played high school sports together. And then there's probably, like, if you go 10 deep, that there's so many people from that class where we went through basically kindergarten to, I'm a little bit older. We had grade 13 high school, and I consider them like brothers and sisters almost. We get together, yes. Christmas, meet up. Yeah, and so I'm super fortunate to be close with all these people and all over the map as far as careers go. Some are outdoor instructors, phys ed teachers. One's an entrepreneur in Hong Kong. One's a lift mechanic in Whistler. So they're kind of all over the map. A few of them are still in Kingston teaching, doing various stuff. And then, so everyone kind of went their own path, and we stay in touch. I'd say then I have another group from university, and a lot of them are actually in Toronto here, so I see them quite a bit. A lot in health professions from kin. They took a similar path we did. Doctors, physios, just a lot of strength coaches, stuff like that. So yeah, it's I would say not too far off the beaten path.
Mm-hmm.
Kingston was a town, it was really hard to get in trouble.
Was it? Yeah, nice.
A classic, for lack of a better term, white suburban Ontario basic town. Really, really hard to do anything wrong there. And you weren't really exposed to anything either. I feel like kids in the country and in the city got in way more trouble than we did. So yeah, I was a pretty good kid growing up.
Nice. Yeah, I somehow managed to not go down some of those pathways. But anyway, that's good. You talk about Kingston. I know Kingston. I've actually only driven through it once, but I know more people from it than I ever thought I would, and it's mainly because of the world of Olympic sailing. Because that's a huge hub for the sailors, right?
Yeah, so they had the Montreal Olympics had the sailing in Kingston. The wind is always nuking there. Mm-hmm. Did a little bit of windsurfing growing up, and I've actually just gotten back into wind sports. I've started doing some windsurfing and some kiting. So I'm not at the level where I can go out in Kingston yet, just because it's always blasting. But that's kind of one of my new endeavors.
Nice. I jumped on a 49er FX, which is like a smaller skiff boat that the females race at the Olympic level, with one of the skippers who went to the Olympics in 2016. I crewed for her for, I don't know, it felt like a while to me, but if you asked her, she'd probably say it was about 30 seconds, because the whole time we were out there, I thought we were going to tip. I'm like, Aaron, I'm too heavy for this boat. I can't be on here with you. And we're like bouncing around. And you gain because I teach a 4th year class at university, Dalhousie University, and when I talk about sailing, A lot of them look at me like, oh, why do they have to be fit? What are they doing? But like you go on one of those boats that has no stability. You've got to hang on to the wires. You've got to put yourself out there to add leverage to the sails. And then not only that, but you're just standing on a boat in the ocean for a decent amount of time. It's tough. And then put in all those other factors and thinking about what you got to do, that fitness piece is huge. So it's always a fun one to then show them a video of, the Kiwis maybe racing, because they've got some really well produced videos, and it's a cool thing to do for these younger kids. Talking about growing up in Kingston, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Fighter jet pilot.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Top Gun?
I almost went to military school. So Kingston has the Royal Military College, and I came really close to doing that and becoming, no Top Gun, but that was kind of a goal at the time. I think back then I might have been too tall. I think there's a certain height requirement. I remember some reason, and then just a bit of a pacifist, so the idea of serving in the military didn't really interest me at the time. Here you go, Coach Brandy. He's just came to see me having a cold one with you. Yeah. I'd say other than that, I don't know. Professional athlete, like all of us, just sports.
Yeah, that was always there. Speaking of, never mind. All right, so you basically talked already about how you got into strength and conditioning field, basically, through that path with Steve Lidstone a little bit, hanging out with him. After you were done that, working at McMaster, tell us a little bit about your path from there and how that led you to working with Push.
Yeah, so I owe most of my career to Steve. He opened so many doors for me. So at the time, he was the athletic therapist and strength coach for Trampoline Canada. So he brought me into that circle. And when it was after the Beijing Olympics. So he went to Beijing with the team, and then he couldn't work with them anymore just because Mac was too demanding, and they were based out of Toronto. And I was kind of moving on from Mac. I had learned as much as I could from 2 years under Steve. And I decided to move to Toronto for two reasons. One, there was a gentleman there. I knew I wanted to work in the Olympic world. And there's a gentleman there, Chris Dawson, who was basically the Sport Institute before the Sport Institute existed. Mm-hmm. He ran a lab out of the Fitness Institute called the Olympic High Performance Center. And I basically wanted to go work with him. So I moved to Toronto, found a personal training job, and Steve had passed on trampoline to me. So I found a gym. They're based out of Richmond Hill. Our Olympic, there's a coach in Richmond Hill that is arguably the best Olympic trampoline coach in the world. His name is Dave Ross. So many stories I could go into on things I've learned from him and the experiences. But I basically found a gym in Markham, Advantage for Athletes, which is where I met Sheldon Persad, who's another mentor of mine. And I started working with the trampoline team there. And the Sport Institute before the Sport Institute was called the Canadian Sports Centre. And so I was contracting with them. And they had liked the work I had done. And I had worked previously with Canada Basketball. There was a centralized program at MAC called NIDA. So I had a bunch of contracts with them, and they decided to start giving me more national team stuff. So they gave me figure skating as well. And I started working with the ice dancers specifically. And I kind of built this niche with acrobatic aesthetic sports. And I just kept what I did with Steve. I did the same thing with Chris Dawson. I basically just showed up whenever I could, learned, volunteered, just tried to do everything I could to be a part of it till they decided, you know what, let's just hire this guy. We have some budget. And that's what kind of got me in with the Canadian Sport Institute, which at the time was the Sports Center. Mm-hmm. I'd say the other thing in between is an interesting one. I was a high school strength coach for 2 years. I kind of forget about this one, but between my time at MAC and the Sport Institute, there's a public school in Markham called Bill Crothers. And, I was kind of done with personal training at the time. Didn't really tickle my fancy. It wasn't mentally engaging enough for me at the time. So a job came up as a strength coach at a public sports high school. And that was really cool from a sense that I was a gym teacher without teaching duties. And I basically had open weight rooms, and then I would train teams. It was a super cool experience for 2 years. And I think Sheldon and I were trying to figure this out. I might have been the first high school strength coach in Ontario in the public system.
I can see that. I mean, especially in the public system, right? Like, you know, I talked to Dan Noble the other day, who works at a high school, but it's an independent, you know, private school. So that is probably a little bit more common. But yeah, on the public side, that's kind of crazy. That's neat though. That would have been really a cool experience, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, coaching groups of 30 kids all day long is again, that'll dial in your coaching and communication as well. You learn how to simplify things real quick.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, I'm just showing the beer now to the screen because Jared Shepard and Corey Kennedy are having a little side conversation here about, you know, what kind of beer they're drinking and how they signed in just to have beers with us, or ish. Yeah, cheers guys. I've got the IPA, the New England IPA going, Jared, because I don't think you were here right off the bat. And, you know, you're one of the people I have on my radar if you've got the proper internet to come on this show in the next couple of weeks. So be ready for that call. Anyway, so Chaps, tell us a little bit more about your life away from, you know, from push or from the gym. You know, you mentioned outdoorsing and all that sort of stuff, but, you know, any more details would be awesome.
I spend most of my time doing adventure sports. You know, I mountain bike a lot, as much as I can. This winter, I decided to take my riding indoors. And, you know, Coach Brendan Arnold, who was on here, I don't know if he still is, I reached out to him because I got a concussion in 2012 jumping on my mountain bike. And I've been really scared to get sendy, as the kids say, since. So I called him up. I'm like, do you want to help coach me? There's a facility in Toronto called Joyride. It's an indoor bike park, and it's got to be the size of like 2 hockey arenas. The place is crazy. And so I started getting coached up, and we did a little barter where he was coaching me, and then I was helping with his athletes in the gym. So he was working with some provincial and national BMX racers, and then working with some freestyle BMX guys, because that's now in the Olympics. It's interesting to see all these, as Jer Shep would say, the dude sports going Olympic. But so I did a lot of indoor BMX this winter. You know, working on I've like my inner 14-year-old, me and all these little kids. I paddle a lot still. I ski kayak. I keep a kayak down by Lake Ontario here. So 10-minute bike ride from my condo. I can be out on the water. That's how I get most of my endurance training as much as possible. Trying to think what else. I do dance class once to twice a week. I started doing it for a few reasons. I used to be a wannabe b-boy back in university. I was part of the McMaster breakdance club, and I've always loved dancing. And I thought, you know, I work with freestyle athletes. So what is something that I could do that would bring style and rhythm to these athletes that are freestyle? Like, style is part of their game. So I wanted to get back into some b-boying and some dancing. And I've always really been intrigued by house dance. I think people think like EDM, but it's more, it's like a fusion of, you know, salsa, Afro, jazz, tap, all this stuff. It's like a 90s soul Chicago dance. And it's one of the fastest dances out there. So literally an hour of that is probably the most, aside from cross-country skiing, the most red line cardio you can do.
Nice.
So that's what keeps me fun. And then I can do some of that with my athletes. I'm always trying to find new ways to engage these athletes and keep the body moving, control your body in space. You know, as Jared would say, like different shapes.
I knew you were going with that right away.
Yeah. Um, and then, I rock climb once a week. I try to ski in the winter as much as I can, both downhill, cross country, basically any sports in the Nate. Yeah,
Nice, man. Yeah.
that's what keeps me balanced in the concrete jungle here.
That's perfect, man. When we were coming on, or actually it was Friday night when I was chatting with Adam Douglas. We were closing up, and I think I maybe let it slip that you were coming on this week. And he was like, "Oh yeah, the most interesting man in the sports science world." And I think we're getting a little bit of a glimpse of that, with all these outdoors activities, the dance activities, maybe the fighter pilot aspirations. So you're not disappointing so far.
Yeah, well, it's also, I would say, a flaw because the ultimate generalist isn't a specialist, right? That's probably why I didn't have a sporting career, was I liked too many things, and I couldn't ever put my energy into just one because I was always drawn to stimulus. Um, that's why I like the city too, is it's just full of so much creative and culture and stimulus that it keeps me really engaged all the time.
Right. Nice, man. That's awesome. Um, there's always I have a good story about we sometimes we talk about vulnerability when we're team building or creating relationships and things like that. Um, and I have this hilarious story that I told in more detail last week. But basically, I was new with the team. It was a team that a sport. It's softball, and I played baseball growing up, so I was very comfortable doing the sport. And so when they asked me to hop out on the field and shag some pop flies, I was all in right away. And I took off for a fly ball, went to lay out like over my shoulder, and felt a weird little pop as I was diving, and got up and realized that my hamstring was like gone. And then within a couple days, it was purple all up the back of my left leg. And so anyway, that was an embarrassing and humbling moment with a team. But I think that it almost like humanized me and brought I don't think any of the softball girls are on right now. Some of them were earlier, but it's still something that they bug me about every once in a while. And so I'm wondering if you, not necessarily personal injury, but if you've got any sort of quasi embarrassing stories of working with athletes or in your job. Oh, hey, J-Sal was there. She remembers.
Um, oh, there's probably lots. I don't know. When you say embarrassing story in sport, my brain goes back to high school basketball. Uh, and I'm just going with my brain here. We were playing our rivals, the local Catholic school. We were public school. We got to wear regular clothes. They had to wear uniforms, but they were our enemies, and it was pretty important game. There was obviously like, you're a young boy. There's some girls in the stands I liked, and I got fouled on a layup, and I was at the free throw line, and I airballed 2 free throws in a row, which is like, airball 1 is bad, airball both, and the whole gym was just like laughing at me. That sticks out in my brain as like a sport embarrassing story that is traumatizing-ish. It was definitely one that humbled me, and it was like, oh man, I can't let that happen again. I have to learn how to perform on demand. I don't know about actual coaching. I'd have to dig in that one. I don't know if you're
Yeah.
going to get one right now, to be honest.
Oh, no problem, man. Sometimes they're just buried so deep in the psyche that you just can't think of it on the spot. Well, that's okay. I'll give you another
Oh, I got
question.
one
So
for you.
okay, there
No,
you
I
go. I knew
do.
you'd come up with it. Okay.
So, Hockey Canada, and some of our boys might have actually been there. It was my first camp, so I'm sure Dougie and Steve were both there. And I didn't grow up playing hockey, and I didn't know about the whole can't step on the logo thing. So the first time in it, I walked right across that logo, and everyone's just like, "Oh, you can't do that." And I was like, no clue. I was like, "What? What?" Um, so and you have to sing. So I had to get up, sing. I can't even remember what I sang. I just remember being like, "Okay, never, ever, ever, ever do that again."
Do
Um,
that again. Yeah.
so that's part of not knowing the sport culture, right? Growing up not playing hockey, I didn't know that was sacrilegious.
Yeah, exactly. Ben Barami just logged in and said what's up. Well, I waved at him, he waved back, but he's kind of the new McMaster head honcho.
Yeah,
Usually
Ryan, go
the
Marauders.
the closing question that I'll ask is, and I'll usually say, now's the time if you guys have questions to ask Chaps, or me or us together, go ahead and write those in on the bottom, and I'll ask them. But what's your go-to drink? You're drinking beer right now, but is that what you usually go to if you're going to have a drink? If you're out with your friends or you're just chilling at home, um, or is it whiskey or gin or something along those lines?
Definitely beer. Actually, my
Beer,
go-to
yeah.
is coffee. I love coffee. A bit of a coffee snob. Um, but beer, a nice IPA. I like really flavorful beer. Um, IPA and then followed by wheat beer.
Hmm.
I'd say I like, if we're gonna go liquor, gin and scotch. I like
Okay.
the pininess of a gin and tonic, Tom Collins. Um, old man drinks. And then yeah, I'd say that's it. I'm a beer guy. I like my
Yeah.
beer.
Oh, the gin you'd have in common then with Dana. We talked to Dana Newman the other day, and that was his kind of go-to. And then I think it was Corey and Ryan McDonald both mentioned Scotch as their something that they at least wanted to be into, or
Lads,
maybe were. Yeah. Okay. My wife just asked a question. She just logged in, probably saying, "Hey, why aren't you in bed yet?" kind of thing. Which, which is which coffee? Coffee from where?
so I have my own espresso machine, and I usually make a cappuccino or an americano. My favorite bean is Pilot. They have a Detour Dark right now, but Pilot Roasters. And then a buddy of mine I used to work with, Carlos Naranjo. He's
Oh,
Colombian and
Carlos.
Ecuadorian. I don't know if that's what you call him, but his family's from the Galapagos. So he started importing beans from the Galapagos. It's called Gala bean. Um, and I usually get bags off him. It's like grown in volcanic soil, very earthy coffee. So I'd say those are probably my two faves right now as far as beans go.
Nice. Since we're on the varietals of various things, J.R. Shepherd asked, which gin would be your go-to?
I like Dylan's. It's a Niagara distillery. Pretty good. A nice Tanqueray, the number 50, the
Yeah,
top one. Bombay. I'm not too picky with my gin, but I definitely, if I'm going to choose, I'd go with the Dylan's.
nice. Yeah, Tanqueray would be my go-to for sure. Or sorry, Bombay Sapphire would be my go-to for sure, not Tanqueray. All right. Well, if we don't have any more questions, I'm kind of all out of questions. Unless Chaps, I've asked this a couple times from people. Do you have any questions for me, or a question for me?
Yeah, so I've watched most of your episodes so far, and seen what the questions have come. So I'm gonna take a bit of a different approach on this one. Like, what are
Uh-oh.
you doing for yourself to stay mentally grounded during all this crazy quarantine stuff?
You know what, man? I think that part of what I'm doing to stay sane is to talk to you guys every night or every once in a while. You know, I, Part of the reason I really really love this job, or my job as a member of the kind of Canadian Sport Institute Network, which kind of at some point at least, or indirectly or directly, had me meet all of the people that I've had on so far. Um, I love those relationships that I build with you guys, being at camps. Sometimes it's, especially you and I, when we first met, I think it was 2011, in Hamilton at a Hockey Canada camp. And those are like 16, 18 hour days if you include after hours, in the dorm room or whatever. So hanging out with you guys and just shooting the shit and having a beer maybe, are amazing. And so that's some of the stuff that I miss. And if I don't get to do that, I think I'll go a little bit crazy. So the fact that I'm getting to do it, even though it's on the phone, and I'm in my basement, but that I think this is really really helping me for sure, staying grounded during that. And other than that, I'm trying to hang out with my kids and as much as I can. And it sucks because my wife's on here right now, and I know that sometimes that means I don't hang out with her because I take like one kid
Yeah.
away and go do something. But that's kind of that's sort of what I've been trying to do. Like even if I play like one game of mini sticks with Jackson, or I go play target throw with him, or something along those lines. That's kind of that's helping out for sure. Okay, Ricky asked a question. Ricky Singh, uh, knowing I didn't even read this before. I'm about to read it to you. So knowing what you guys
Yeah.
know now, what advice would you give your younger self?
Ooh, that's a good one. Um, Take more time. Don't rush into stuff. Uh, I probably wouldn't have gone to university right away. I probably would have taken a little bit more time to grow up, maybe traveled a bit earlier, maybe worked a bit earlier. I did that with my master's. I didn't do my master's till I was 30, and I really took a lot of time to figure stuff out. So that would probably be the big thing is just don't rush. There's no rush. School will be there. Everything will be there. Kind of grow up and figure yourself out first.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, especially if you so that's funny that you say that because like I'm a young age group within my grade. So I finished school and I was 17, and I had no plans after high school. I went to a baseball tournament in Lethbridge with my traveling team, and the coach at the University of Lethbridge watched the game, and he came up to me afterwards and asked me where I was going to school. And I said nowhere, and he's like, "Well, you got to come play for me." And this was like a month before school was going to start. So I tried to enroll, and I knew I wanted to do kinesiology, and my plan was to take a year off. But so I wanted to get into kin. So I remember actually being in my grandparents' apartment in Vancouver, signing up like last minute for classes, trying to be in kinesiology, but of course none of them were available. So I got into like archaeology, anthropology, like advanced Spanish. And I went and didn't get any residence or anything like that, and I ended up staying in a basement with a couple of weird weird other people, and there was and it was a bizarre experience as a 17-year-old. And so I get there and went to the first practice. um, Went it was we didn't play baseball at all. We picked weeds out of the garden, and then we lunged around the field for about an hour. So that was a weird situation. Uh, and then I got in there and I played for about a month. I stuck around at school for about a month, and I left. And I in certain instances I regret leaving because I wasn't sure. Like I still don't know where baseball would have taken me if I played university. Some of the guys that were there, transferred to U.S. schools, which was always the goal. But I didn't. I didn't stay and I didn't do that. So, but at the same time, if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be where I am now, and I love my life now. So, yeah, it's a similar situation. I don't know. Sometimes I want to say I'd go back and say, Scott, stick it out, like don't leave school. And then in other instances, I'm like, it ended up going pretty well. So, what are you going to do?
So what would you say answer to that question? I'm curious. Would it be anything different than that?
No, I mean I don't think so. I think what I wish I would have done was maybe gone and played baseball a year later, like when I was a little bit more ready, or when I had some time to plan for it and do what I. So that might have been what I would have done differently, I guess. But that's really it. So I don't know. I think that some things happen for a reason, and I think if I would have stuck around Calgary, I would have gotten into trouble because the friends that I had at the time definitely did. And so I was happy that I left when I did. And then even when I came back, I kind of was in just a little bit of a different mindset. So I think that I'm happy that I did. I think the biggest thing, my dad used to tell me this. He basically used to say nothing good happens after midnight. And I didn't always listen to that. And I would tell myself, listen to your dad, which is funny. I don't know how I'm going to impart that because he obviously knew, he experienced it himself. I'm trying to figure out ways to make sure that Jackson listens when I tell him, and Mariko and Bodie now too, but he's front of mind because he's getting closer.
Burpees and suicides?
Yeah, something like that, right?
So here's another one for you. I'm actually curious because you've been on the East Coast a while now. How do you like living out east versus out west?
We love it out here, to be honest. Like Kimmy, I think she's still listening. Kimmy and I love it out here. We came here with the idea that we were going to stay for at the most 3 years, and that's essentially what we planned for. We got an apartment when we first moved here. we fell in love early on. And it's just, the pace of life's a little bit slower. Like people are a little bit more chill than they would be in Calgary. It's not the rat race, it's not about who's got the bigger boat and the bigger car and all that sort of stuff. And we kind of like that. We like that chill, vibe. And we got really lucky. We were able to get a house that, is amazing. It's in a cul-de-sac with a lake in the backyard, and the kids are loving life, and we're loving it too. So I don't know, man, it'd be tough. It'd be tough to leave. Something crazy would have to happen for sure.
Nice. So you think you're an East Coaster for life now?
The roots are there, it doesn't mean that something can't pull them out, but yeah.
One more for you. Can you sit in a K1 or a C1?
I've never tried to get into a K1. I did get into a K2 with Brian Malfazy, and we lasted about 4 seconds. Have you been in a K1? You said you did some flatwater canoeing, so you must have been.
Oh no, I can't. I
close.
didn't do any racing. Like I can't sit in boats, man. It's crazy. If you didn't grow up doing it, it's such a hard skill. Like I see kayak, which is a decently tippy boat. Like you can roll it, right? But a K1 is like sitting on a tightrope. I can't even imagine a C1. It's crazy what like the balance combined with the strength. Like it's such an elegant movement pattern. You don't realize how much balance is involved. It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, how's Malfazy doing? I haven't seen that guy in a while.
I haven't seen him in a while either, to be honest. Like I stopped working on the men's side, and I still see the guys that are around Nova Scotia, but I haven't seen Brian in a while.
Yeah, kid was a stud. He's still paddling, I'm guessing.
Yeah, no, this year would have been super interesting for a lot of people, man. Like the K4 had qualified, but the people in the boat hadn't yet, and so there was still that fight going on. So we'll see when that happens now.
Who would have been your pick on the 4 in the boat? Is that too tough of a question?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I've been removed from the men's side for a while. I've just been working with the women now for the last 3 years, and I can't do that.
What boats? The women's qualified K4, didn't they?
They qualified K4 as well, and then there would have been the chance at the Pan Am qualifier to potentially get 2 more spots, like a K2 and a K1. That was up for grabs.
Nice.
Yeah, so it could have been it still could. It still is going to happen, I'm sure. Just probably a year later.
Yeah, I miss that world, man. I miss the Florida winters.
Yeah,
being
man.
in the boat on the Indian River there.
Yeah. Oh man, it was a lot of fun. And again, another nice place. You and I crossed over there a couple times, and that was always a lot of fun too. Some of those coaches in that world are a ton of fun. Hey, they like to hang out and just chat and stuff like that. So.
Well, it's probably the one world where the coaches have the best S&C education out of any sport coach. Track similar, but their knowledge is amazing. And, I credit some of it to all the Montreal defectors. We have Hungarians and Romanians and Polish and all these amazing people, like Tudor Bompa, that all this knowledge came over with canoe kayak. It was pretty amazing. I learned more from that sport than I think I ever gave to it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Something I learned last week when I was chatting with Adam is that we're going to get kicked off in about 1 minute.
Okay.
So we might as well say our salutation.